Courtney, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm excited to have you back on. I know you're doing some amazing things. I know, with the podcast, you got your book coming out, or it's out now actually.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where so much, I just can't wait to dive in. I mean, I had such a great time chatting with you last time, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting and diving deep back into what you're up to and so much more, especially
Yes.
for the listeners.
I know, and I was thinking about it. I think you were one of the first podcasts I had ever been on.
Love that. And now
Yeah,
you're
besides my own, and then started like branching out and doing interviews on other people's, and yours was the first. I was extremely nervous that first time, but now not so much.
Oh, you sound well. You have improved. Not that I even, but hey,
Oh.
practice makes better or permanent, right? Yeah, practice makes permanent. Yeah, that's the phrase. But anywho,
It really does. It really does. The more you do of these, the easier it becomes.
that's what I try to tell clients when they get on one. They're all freaking out, and I was like, I'm like, just keep doing it, and you'll see how natural the conversation just goes and takes you.
Yeah, I say 10. After you've done 10, you're good.
Love it.
Mhm.
So let's talk. I mean, you got a book that you've been helping so many people on sobriety. I feel like there's this whole movement, and I feel like when I first met you, you were maybe it was popular, but it's nowhere near the level of what I'm seeing now. Like,
Mhm.
what is it, 4 years ago, we had you on the podcast or something like that, and we discussed
Yes.
these things. And now it's like I'm seeing more and more people coming out with sobriety and more and all those kind of things. Is it just I'd love to ask this question before we get into the book more and talk about all this. Is it just awareness of people is coming to things? Is it a trend, or is this? I'd love to just to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, sobriety's always been a trend, right? But we just didn't know it was a trend. Without social media. I mean, people have been sober and living in recovery for so many decades upon decades upon decades. However, it wasn't talked about because there was still so much shame around it, right? So now we live in a world, of social media and all that, and where more and more people are owning it and talking about it out loud, which is great because it just brings so much more awareness. And where it's like sobriety and recovery doesn't have to continue to be hush hush. And why continue to live into that shame when you were living in your active addiction, active relationship with drugs and alcohol? I mean, that's how I was. That's how I lived for 10 years. So when I got sober, that's why I was like, I need to do the complete opposite of what I did for 10 years to make this work. So I really think with the power of podcasts, with social media, with more and more quit lit books coming out, that there's just a huge awareness and people are owning it and understanding that it's okay to live a life without alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be.
No, I love that, and I'm happy to see that awareness because it has been, I don't know, since I've talked to you on this podcast, and it's been from that moment. It's just more and more people I'm seeing coming out talking about it. Maybe that's just what they're just coming out and talking about it. But I'll be like, oh, this person's sharing their 90 day or their 1 year or this year or that, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is a thing that people are really coming out more with. And I'm just like, this is cool to see. I mean, like you're bringing up the whole thing with that low vibration stuff, shame, and all those things that come with it, and to go through that. But let's for those who are wanting to get on the sobriety thing or looking to do it or tried and failed and this and that, you got a book to help them. I love to dive in. I'm leaving. Let you take the run on this.
Sure.
And tell us a little about the book. What's the why, big why behind it? I always like to get to that, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so when I was approached to write this book, it was like, well, do you want to write your story? I'm like, no, I don't know. They're like, what do you want to write about? I said, well, my real specialty is the first 90 days. And that's what I coach about, and I think that those first 90 days are the most crucial for somebody, right? And so they said, sure, let's write about the first, 3 months without alcohol and how you can thrive in that. Because I do believe that you can thrive in your sobriety, that sobriety is not the death sentence, it's the act of addiction is. So the book, and what's most important, what people should understand about the recovery process is the fact that you have to tailor this to you. So, what worked for your brother or your neighbor or your sister in law is not going to work for you, right? Because it's not a one size fits all program. We're not all prescribed the same medication day in, day out. Everybody's life looks different. So, with me guiding you through those first 3 months, it's really about figuring out what's going to work best for you. For example, do you need to go into the 12-step program? Do you maybe need to go find a therapist? Do you want to find an online community where they provide meetings and it's women's only? What works best for you? And then, of course, throughout the book, there's a series of journal prompts, and there's space inside the book, which I love, that you can write out this homework that I assign you to write this out and work through of your why did you quit drinking alcohol? I mean, it's really two mindset tricks to make you look at the relationship with alcohol, that it's no longer a good thing for you.
I love that. Why do you think some people then, when one of the main struggles is that with your experience and your coaching and so forth is that they fail at sobriety. They get into it and then they lose, and they not lose, but they in their terms failed.
Yeah. I do want to say something about the fail. There's no failing. This isn't, nobody's getting an A or a B or a C. We're not getting graded on this. So there is no pass fail. What there is continuing to try. And there's so many statistics out there. And I just recently heard of one that it says the average person, it will take up to 7 years for them to finally quit drinking. I mean, that's huge, but I can see it. For me, it took 4 years, right? Like you kind of keep trying, you figure out a way to still incorporate alcohol in your life when it no longer works. You set a bunch of rules, an example, like I'm not going to drink any shots tonight. I'm just going to stick to beer. And then you end up at the same place where you started from. So I think that why people end up, and I like to kind of refer to it as a failing forward, is because they're still putting themselves in situations that are extremely triggering at like 7 days. Like you should not be hanging out at bars still or in a friend's campfire at like 7 days. Take the pause. The socialness will come back in time, but you really have, because it's such a big lifestyle change. And the identity, they're not identifying as a person who is sober. So if I'm going to still continue to tell myself I am not sober, well, that's how you're going to act, right? I mean, the mind is a powerful thing, and you know that more than anybody else does, where you really have to get into the identity of a person living a sober life and use verbiage like that, even if it feels a little bit off, saying, I am becoming a sober woman or a male or whoever, a person. So people still continue to put themselves in triggering situations, not identifying with their new way of living, and also to reacting. It's such a quick reaction instead of taking the pause and stepping back for a hot minute to be like, how is this going to affect me tomorrow? Because it goes into the whole instant gratification. So if you just take the pause for a minute, you can see where this is going to lead you. And then on the flip side of that too, Dr. Vic, it's like, some people need to burn their hand 500 times before it clicks like, okay, this isn't going to work anymore.
No, it's so true, right? A lot of times humans, we have to make that we make changes when we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like we get to that, we're tired of being fallen back on our knees. And then we get to that point, I'm like, okay, I'm done. This is it. I'm making that change finally. But no, it's so true. I love how you bring up the identity factor to it all, because that's probably, I think, the biggest thing for an individual, just in anything, right? Because if you I changed careers, there's an identity shift I had to go through, where from being a chiropractor now to full on coach. And when we look at individuals, it's like they're like, okay, who is this new person? Right. This is who I'm used to. This is who I've been. This is what I've been doing. This is my social life. This is all this. And now all of a sudden it's like, what's that? I don't know what that is. And I'm assuming you walk through all this in your book. So yes, what's the, where do people begin in this 90-day journey?
Well, what I tell everybody when they first start, please talk to your doctor about quitting drinking alcohol, because I don't know who will be reading this. I can't just tell you quit alcohol cold turkey and you've built up a tolerance to like a bottle of wine a day. So everybody should be talking to a medical professional about detox and withdrawal. And then where you start is you start one day without drinking. You get to the next, do the same thing over. Within that first week, because you're going to go also through a detox, which is known as a hangover for like 2-3 days. Well, we all know what a hangover is, right? When your head is hurting, you might have dry heaved a couple times the next day, a little bit shaky. And then what follows after that hangover, and what people don't understand, is then they're in pause, which is post-acute withdrawal syndrome. That is where you're going to be a little bit more irritable. Anxiety can increase because your nervous system, as you know, you've been putting poison in your nervous system for years upon years. You're going to be more tired, low energy. So within that first week too, it is important for you also to clean out the cupboards and the fridge. Stop holding on to bottles of booze and, beer in your fridge. Give it away. Why are you continuing to put triggers right in front of your face? I mean, I have to say it. Like, if I were to go out and buy junk food and put it in my house, I would eat it all within a couple days. So when I don't have that in my house, I'm not going to consume it. Same thing goes for alcohol. If you live with somebody who drinks, please ask them to hide it. I know that sounds extreme and or childish, but it will work. Just like, hey, out of sight, out of mind, keep it in the garage, or let's not keep it in the house at all. That's a conversation you're going to have with the person you live with. So really, you need to start there by talking with the doctor, cleaning out your house, and understanding what your body is about to go through. And that is through the post-acute withdrawal syndrome.
I love it. And I love the advice. I mean, it doesn't, from my end, it's not extreme at all. You need to desensitize, right? And so you need to have those, get to that point where if you see it, you're like, man, it doesn't mean nothing anymore. And I mean, that's not going to happen in a week. And most time it can happen for majority of people, and it comes to that point where, doing that kind of a process is, I think just that advice alone, you're setting up for long-term success.
Yes.
A little at a time. And then, those withdrawals are going to happen. I mean, it's amazing when we take something out that's toxic in their life, and it's in anything, right? If people do a detox, or if they start to do a sugar detox, or if they do, I'm going blank, but sugar is the one that shot out at me. It's amazing what will come up in those first 3 to 5 days.
I mean, same thing too. If you try to like stop watching TV, you know what I mean? Like if you are like, I'm just going to not watch TV at night anymore. You're going to go through a detox too of that, because that's what you did for so long.
Yeah. And the body, the brain, the nervous system is always looking for condition response, condition, repetition, and patterns. And so when we break up the pattern, the brain's like, what are you doing? What's happening here? Where's my whatever you want to call it? Why is that not there? And it'll start triggering things to try to get you to make that go back to it. And then it's like, nope, I'm staying here. This is what I need to do, and so forth. So that's the first week. And then what are some of the things people who are things that may come up, because it's like after that first week, is it like kind of smooth road, or is there challenges that come along the way that they can see happening in the next weeks to come?
Oh, for sure. There's going to be challenges, because it's, again, going back, this is a big lifestyle change. So definitely, riding this train out, some people experience what you hear, the language you hear is the pink cloud, which is a euphoric feeling. I never had that. And I always get jealous when I hear people who are like, I'm on the pink cloud. But I have to say that pink cloud will burst. And why the euphoria feeling? It's because you've taken that poison away and stopped adding it to your body. So then that is in the process of the detox and all of that. If you do not experience that euphoria, there is nothing wrong with you. It is normal, but And it's almost better to not have that pink cloud, because it's like you can get through those hard days sooner rather than writing that pink cloud out and then a year it bursts and you're like, where are those rainbows and butterflies I was seeing for the past year? Like, there's no unicorns exist, So I kind of think it's a blessing not to have that pink cloud, because it can kind of blurs the vision of what it is. And when I say that, it's because of the reality of the situation is when you get sober, you are an adult. You're a newborn in an adult's body. So when I got sober, I was almost 30 years old. So I felt like a baby in this grown ass woman's body, being like, oh my God, these feelings, because the feelings will come to the surface because you suppress emotions for years and years and years. And who knows what a person's trauma was and why they decided to cope with drugs and alcohol in the first place, right? So expect emotions to come up. That's a huge one, and that's one that I share. If you're crying for no good reason, there is nothing wrong with you. If you're angry, there is nothing wrong with you. If you're sad, there is nothing wrong with you. You have to ride out these waves of emotions and find healthier options to cope with them, right? And that could be meditation, which you got me started on to do consistently, which I still have done. And breathing techniques. You can journal those feelings out. You can take a walk and rage walk for 30 minutes if you need to. There's other options than just saying, F this, I'm going to reach for the bottle. Like, F this, I've had a bad day. You can start baking. And that is all ways to express yourself too. With this journaling, walking, baking, you can express yourself creatively to get that energy out and focus on something positive instead of, hiding behind this alcohol solves everything and continuing to add the problem day in, day out.
I can even see even with the patterns of that, where it's like, well, like, oh, you got to get the energy out. And some people may I just got to get through this, and I don't want to go back. And it's a whole shame thing in a different way that can come back.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, you do have to get that energy out in some way, shape, or form, and go for a hike, go for a run, go do something, whatever. Right? Find what works for you. This is what I tell people a lot. And to recenter that energy so you can get back to that calm centeredness. But it is a lot of, even this research that I've done over the years, it's so much repressed stuff for so long. It's like a child who has never been able to express themselves, have been whatever, can't express how they feel. They're just locked up. And then all of a sudden, now it's going to happen.
Yeah. I talk to a lot. I refer to my situation as a lot of conditioning too in my childhood. And look, it doesn't mean that it's all entirely a bad thing, because now as a parent, I understand each generation before us did the best they could with what they were dealt with, right? So a lot too of people who end up turning to alcohol and coping that way, it's like, were you told that you couldn't, your opinion didn't matter? Were you not seen as a child? Were you told not to cry because you were a male? Were you just told to shut up and look pretty because you were a female? Like, a lot of this plays into why people cope with alcohol the way that they do.
Oh, 100%. And it's that it's that feeling that we chase, that whatever gives us to that place. Wanting to get there and whatnot. But no, I love it. It's almost like a spiritual awakening.
In oh my God, yes. I mean, honestly, the day I've had two really spiritual awakenings in my life where I was, that close to the universe. And it was the day I got sober. And then it was number one, the day when I had my son. 1000%.
I love that. And so people have these emotions. There's ways they can express it out. I love the baking idea. That's something I love to.
But and this is the thing, to go back to that. I, as a child, before life happened, used to love baking. That's why I suggest it. And then throughout the years, you forget of these things you used to do when you were a kid. So it's like you really have to go back to, because trust me, and I did it. I had to Google hobbies, Dr. Vic, after I got sober, because I had none other than drinking and working, because I was at that level of like, that is what I did. So when I saw baking, I was like, oh, I used to do that and loved it. So I brought it back into this new life that I was living, and it filled up so much time, and that time, and then I almost got lost in it because I was creating something, and it filled up a time where I would have drank alcohol. So it replaced that bad habit.
And you fulfilled your soul in another way because you're doing something you love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those one of the messages I share to a lot of my clients is always to follow your excitement and whatever excites you.
Yeah.
And you're doing that in baking. It's just like I like to bake, but I don't bake cookies and stuff. It's more breads that I like, and it's just but I also cook a lot. I've been cooking since I was 6 years old, and it's one of those things that I just when I want to escape and just be able to connect with that inner child of myself.
Yeah.
It's like I'll just sit there and I'll think of something and I'll look at what I have and I'll go, okay, if I do this and this, I could put that together. I could do this. We'll try this out. We'll put that there and let's just see. And there's no judgment, where I can just have fun. And if it comes out, hey, how'd it taste? Good. Oh, somebody like, oh, this is amazing. I'm like, yeah, I got lucky. I don't even know how that happened. But it's one of those things where if it comes out bad, it's like I'll learn where I can improve on that, what I shouldn't have done. But it's that expression of oneself and just to be in that moment and that feeling, that childlike again, I think is another aspect of just healing so much.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's just so much power in creating something. I mean, I also Mod Podge picture frames. I didn't craft before, but my husband was like, at the time, he was like, you could do this. And I was like, all right, cool. And I sat there and I Mod Podge picture frames for 90 days to sit my ass, to be still, to not, not be forced where I had to force myself to be comfortable sitting at home within my skin.
And that's tough for a lot of people.
Oh, and I think it's more tougher now. It's tougher nowadays too, just because so many, just because of people are stimulated all day long.
No, that's what I was gonna say. That's the main thing. Not even if you have addiction or not. It's just there's so many things to keep us distracted to not take the time to just tap within and be able to just connect with oneself and just be with oneself. I mean, when we first met 4 years ago, I said, meditate for 90 days and you're not going to like me in those 90 days because of where that was. That issue I talk about then is probably double to triple now. And it's just amazing how much more we're in that kind of a place and so forth.
Yeah, I don't think I ever shared it with you, but my sister one time looked at me. She's like, what happened to you? I said, excuse me? She's like, you're not reactive anymore. And I said, oh, that's because I meditate every day, sister.
It is so true. I'll tell you. True.
And now, honestly, that is the number one thing I start telling clients and people all around. The sooner you start meditating, the better off you will be.
Yeah, because it'll give you that will, but just from sobriety and making that change and all that, it will build up that, I don't want to say willpower, but it's the only word I have right now, but that the resiliency to be like, nope, this is where you keeps your mind sharp and center. I'm going to stay in this lane. This is who I am now. This is who I'm becoming. And it makes it harder to step out of that or go back to old patterns.
1000%. Yeah. Meditation will help you in the long run.
I love it. So we talked about journaling. We talked about tools that people can do in the process. Anything else that we may not have covered in the 90-day process?
I mean, there's so much more that goes into it, especially too in the book of how I explain like the 60-minute rule, because everybody's main concern is their social life. Majority, I will say like 95% of people, it's what am I going to do sober? How am I going to socialize? Are my friends going to like me? And, you can socialize. You just might have to put a time frame on it. And I created the 60-minute rule where it's like an hour is plenty of time to go socialize for a bit and then leave before the triggers start to happen. If they don't happen at 60 minutes, then extend it 30 minutes. But you really have to use your body as like your North Star of how you start reacting to things, where it's like, oh, okay, people are starting to get a little bit drunker. Like, do I like this? Is it making me uncomfortable? And when you start listening to your gut and how your body is reacting to that type of stress, listen to it and exit stage left. But yes, the socializing thing is huge.
I'm glad we brought that up. That was a question
Mhm.
I wanted to ask because that seems to be the next thing, and I love
Mhm.
I love the rule aspect to it because it does allow, but even more so, you're speaking my love language when it comes to trust your body. Your body will
Yeah.
always guide you along the way, no matter what.
Well, and then plus too, when you've been out of fight or flight mode for so long, and then it came up, like for me, it came back up when I had my son, because it's like straight into fight or flight. That is what happened to me. And so I was like, oh my God, I haven't experienced this feeling in such a long time. And it really is true of like, people have to tune more into that and trust those feelings and red flags that are coming up. It's like, no, even too, if you were invited to a party on a Friday, you're like, yes, I'll go. And then Friday you wake up and you're like, I don't trust myself yet. If that thought is coming to your head and you're feeling it in your body, then do not go, because that's just putting yourself into like the lion's den when you are not ready yet. And there's no shame in not being ready yet. There's just not.
100%. I love that. Has being a mom helped you tap more into your intuition?
Oh my God, yes. Well, I have to say this because I really do think for me and what I have read more and more and talked with other women. So my son's about to be 2, and I felt like after 18 months, like that cloud lifted, and I'm starting to connect back to myself and my soul of where that intuition, I can feel it again. Because again, I was in fight or flight mode for about 18 months, Dr. Vic.
That's a change in everything. Trust me, I get it.
Yeah, with the hormones and all of that, like I've heard it more now be talked about, the postpartum experiencing lasting up to 7 years, which like I could see that, especially too if you have multiple kids. So I'm tuning back into my intuition and feeling it more and more lately.
Love it. No, because I just know like sometimes too with moms, they will have a baby and stuff, and when they get through the postpartum, but then they're like they have a deeper intuitiveness that's like, if they're aware though, I'm not gonna say everybody
Mhm.
just gets this,
Mhm.
but it's one of those
Mhm.
things where it's like you have your intuition like it's heightened to another level.
Mhm.
Um, Let me know if that has happened or not. I'm excited for it, but I'm excited. 2 year old are almost coming up around. It's a week away from my birthday. Actually, I'm on the
Oh,
8th.
nice, nice.
So
Yeah, I will definitely let you know as because I've had to start re-healing, or healing in this new path. I'll never get back to where I was pre my son, because that's not the case, because now I have him and I don't want to get back there. But it's a healing path I've started on the past couple months, and I'm definitely feeling reconnected to my new self.
I love it. So, real quick before we wind up, how can people, get your book, follow you,
Mhm.
and all the great stuff you do? You got your podcast and everything else.
Yep. So you can find my book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can also go to CourtneyRecovered.com, which is my website, and there's more options of where to get the book. You can listen to the Sober Vibes podcast and follow me on social media. I'm at Sober Vibes on all of them. The one I party most on is Instagram. So.
Awesome. And I'll make
Mhm.
sure I'll have all that info in the show notes. Courtney, it was great. I love what you're up to, and just I still keep in touch from here and there when I get a
Mhm.
chance on social media just to see how
Mhm.
you're doing. And I love what you've been
Yep.
up to. As soon as I heard you were writing a book, and once I got wind, I was like, I got to get her back on. I just want to have that
Yes.
conversation. It's a great opportunity just to reconnect and then hear about your journey, what you've been up to, and I just love what you're doing for the world, and you're helping people break through and really help them tap back into their power.
Mhm.
Really, at the end of the
Well,
day.
yes. Well, thank you so much. And I remember when you were my coach and we did that, I said in that coaching that I was going to write a book one day. And here we are.